Welcome to the special post-election episode of Anycast. This is my podcast on YouTube where I talk about anything that's going on, primarily sports. Although today, no sports talk. It's as the title mentioned. This is primarily going to be, in fact, it's going to be specifically strict on the post-election results. Because last night we had the election. For those, hopefully you all went out and voted. Nice weather throughout the country, so you had an opportunity to go vote if you hadn't yet. It looked like early on things were looking very good for Trump overnight, and I can be a witness to it because I literally stayed up the whole night. I'm going on little sleep, but you could hardly tell. Things started to turn for Joe Biden late last night into the wee morning hours, and so far today, he's picked up a couple more wins. But as it stands right now, with 7 states still undecided at this point, we've got Joe Biden with 237 electoral votes. President Trump has 214 electoral votes. And for those who don't know, in order to win the presidency, you need to get 270 electoral votes. So Biden is getting pretty close to that magical number. And as it stands right now, based on what we've seen so far, he's pulled ahead in Michigan. This was one of the states that he was struggling in most of last night. He pulled ahead this morning. He's stretched that lead out since. He's led in Arizona and Nevada throughout. Those are the keys, because if he hangs on and wins those 3 states, you do the math. Michigan has 16 electoral votes. Arizona has 11. Nevada 6. You add those up, that's 33, which is what he needs in order to win the election. But it was really interesting to see how things unfolded, especially considering this time around, this election was a lot different than in past elections because you're dealing with the pandemic. So you had different methods of voting. A lot of people voted absentee or mail-in. Most or others, mostly on the Trump side, they went out and voted on Election Day yesterday. And you could really tell the difference. There were some states, particularly Ohio and Florida, right off the bat that looked really, really good for Joe Biden. But that's because they counted all the absentee and mail-in ballots first. Then when they factored in those same-day ballots, that's where Trump came back and closed the gap and ultimately won those 2 states. So his rallies, I mean, while they are questionable because of the fact that he's doing it in large crowds, packed, with no mask, it made a difference because that got people out to go and vote yesterday, and that allowed him to win those 2 states that would have really put Biden in really better shape going into the night. Things were not looking good. Texas was another one that Biden got off to a good start on, but eventually Trump and those same-day voters ultimately won the state for Texas, or for Trump at Texas. And so he picked up those 38 votes. Otherwise, everything played out as you would imagine. Biden won those West Coast states and the Northeast states. Trump primarily dominated the South. In fact, he had a line going where he won Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, and the Dakotas. Biden was able to hold serve in Minnesota. And so, yeah, I think things are getting really tight and things are looking really good for Trump. And especially in those states where he won last time around in 2016. The key to his win over Hillary Clinton was he took Pennsylvania with its 20 electoral votes, Michigan and Wisconsin with its 10 electoral votes. And early on last night, it looked like that was going to be the case again for Donald Trump. He was winning in all 3 of those. But different story with those states. Basically, they were the inverse of the Ohio, Florida, and Texas states, where in those states, they counted the absentee and mail-in ballots first, then factored in the same-day votes. With Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, it was the inverse of it. So they did the same-day ballots first and then counted those absentee and mail-in because they couldn't count those until Election Day. So they were hanging on to them until Election Day. And in the case of Pennsylvania, they actually have a rule where they can receive your ballots 3 days after the election, provided it was postmarked on Election Day or before Election Day. So theoretically, you'd be waiting until Friday to potentially see the outcome of the Pennsylvania battle there. But things flipped for Biden, particularly in Wisconsin. He was able to miraculously overcome that deficit because Trump had dominated throughout in Wisconsin, and all of a sudden, Biden, with those absentee ballots that came in the Milwaukee County, where Milwaukee is, and again, for those who don't know where I am, that is my home state. Milwaukee's about a 50-minute drive from where I am down south. All of a sudden, he picked up a bunch of votes that vaulted him into the lead. He then proceeded to stretch that lead, and ultimately, just a short while ago today, finally was declared the winner of Wisconsin. However, Trump is going to try to go for a recount there. Now, that's his right. It's all fair. Not sure how much difference it's going to make, especially with a 20,000 vote difference in Wisconsin. I just don't see how he's going to win that. So, I mean, that's his right. I mean, it's all fair there. So we'll see what happens there. But then Michigan was another one that Trump had led for virtually the whole night. And then finally this morning, Biden took the lead. He has since stretched that lead out. That is one of the 7 states still undecided at this point, but things are looking good for Biden there. Arizona and Nevada are 2 other key states that have not been decided yet that are in Biden's favor. But another state that looked like at first was working in Trump's favor is slowly starting to turn around for Joe Biden. Trump is still winning at this point in Georgia, but there's still a lot of votes to be accounted for. So we're going to see what happens here. But all indications are is that it looks like Trump may or may not hang on in Georgia. He may or may not hang on in North Carolina, where he's winning by about the same margin as he is in Georgia. Pennsylvania, he's got a little bit more of a cushion over Biden, although Biden continues to chip away at that lead because, again, what's winning the battle for Biden now? He's making up that ground by winning the rural areas, and that's where Democrats usually do well. And what's left to get? It's nothing but absentee ballots and mail-ins. Again, benefits Biden and the Democrats. So that combination has allowed him to close the gap. That's going to be interesting to see. And especially because, again, as I mentioned, with Pennsylvania, they're a little bit different. You can postmark, you can have your ballot received after Election Day, up to 3 days after Election Day, provided it was postmarked on or before Election Day. And that could play a factor into deciding Pennsylvania. Trump, obviously, not thrilled about the results because he thought that he was in great shape at one point, and he was. And then all of a sudden, things started to turn against him. And then he made a remark that Twitter ultimately removed. Good move by Twitter. Trump thinks that the election's been stolen. It's not stolen. Don't let Trump's words get to you. The election was not stolen. It has not been rigged. This is the process that works, especially considering this year. This year is a reminder that we just need to be patient with the system, with the process. Because, again, you have to factor in all these mail-in and absentee ballots. We had a record number of mail-in and absentee ballots because people did not want to go out and vote on Election Day and risk their health and other people's health. Because, remember, we're still dealing with a pandemic. Do not forget that. And again, I emphasize, wear a mask and try to keep your social distance. So, again, if they had the ability to mail in their ballot or do an absentee, they did that. I was one of them. I did an absentee ballot because, again, I for my own, to prevent potentially spreading the virus, because you never know. You don't want to take a chance. I'm a type of guy that doesn't like to take a chance. So if I have a chance to do an absentee ballot or a mail-in ballot, I did that. You could go and vote on the same day, on Election Day. That's perfectly fine. That's your right. It doesn't matter how you do it, because the bottom line is, as long as you're voting, that's what matters. You're getting your voice heard. But I will give the voters credit. They kept their social distancing. From what I saw, they were wearing their masks. And things seemed to be going smoothly for the most part. I mean, there were some hiccups here or there in the locations, the voting locations. But for the most part, they're able to work around them, resolve those issues, and be able to proceed. And you got to give those workers, those poll workers, major, major credit. You got to give them hats off because this is not an easy job. Having to take care of all these ballots, make sure everything goes by smoothly, and again, dealing with the pandemic as well. I know that can be a bit stressful. So if you see someone who worked the polls, walk up, obviously try to keep your social distance, but tell them thank you. Thank you for doing your duty and helping out get these results in a timely manner. Because it's important that we can have a fair election where we have a outright winner and there's no arguments whatsoever. Now, it looks like the Senate will be ruled by the Republic and the Democrats are going to hold serve in the House. So it looks like we're pretty much back to where we were. The only difference is we're probably going to have a new president, which will be Joe Biden in that case. Whoever ends up being president, you're dealing with a divided Congress trying to help those who have been struggling in the pandemic and trying to get us out of this pandemic. So that's going to be the big task at hand for whoever does become president. But I have faith that we are going to get out of this pandemic. We can help the cause by wearing our masks and keeping our social distancing. And again, I emphasize that. Please do that. You will help not only yourself, but other people as well around you because you do not want to risk that during this pandemic. But in the meantime, we're on pretty much standby with these states. So we shall see what happens. Could take days, could take weeks. Hopefully it won't take weeks. Definitely shouldn't take months for this to get resolved. But we shall see what happens. And so hope you guys enjoy your day. And again, congratulations. You've made it through one of the more intriguing election days of your generation. And it's something you'll get to talk about for years to come. So go relax today. Have some fun. The hard work is done on your part. Now you can go relax and not worry too much about the election, especially since the weather around the country looks really, really nice now. Go take advantage of it and just have some fun. And I'll catch you next time. Bye.